Hello, welcome back to COP 3353, Directory Management Part 2. This is Dr. Dave Gaitros, and we're going to talk about setting permissions. The version of chmod that I'm going to show you today is a rather old version. I'm going to show you a couple versions of it. You may or may not like this version of it. You may use the other, but you'll have to learn to use it anyway because it is still used across the realm of Unix systems. Let me clear this, and we're in our test directory here that we're using. 6 files in a temporary directory show you everything. Now let's review a little bit. I'm going to go back over the directory itself, and I'm using list structure ls-al, all lowercase, and what you see before you is the directory contents. To review the string of characters on the left hand side, there are 10 of them. The first one, lowercase d or a dash, tells me if this is a directory or not, and you'll notice that the period and the double period, that's the current directory and the root directory. Those are directory pointers. We have a directory at the end called temp directory, and it is a directory. And let's just go through here and we'll kind of decipher this string. The first one, which is the current directory, has a D, and the R, W, and X that appear first, that is the permissions that the owner of the system had, that's myself. Read, write, and execute. And if there's a dash, that means that there's no permission set. The second set of characters, this one is R dash and X, says that you can read, not write, and you can execute. And then the next set of letters, R dash and X, means you can read, not write, and execute. And we can go down and we can look at them. We can see that file 1.dat here it is not a directory. The owner can read, write, and execute, and the group can read and execute, as well as the world. File 1.text, the owner can read, write, and execute, but nobody else can do anything. And finally, file 2.dat, everybody can do everything. It is not a directory. What we're going to show you today is how to actually change that using this version of chmod. Now remember our permission settings right here, and I'll put this right here so you can kind of review it a little bit. If we want to turn on read, write, and execute, we put a bit in the column that we want to turn that permission on, and we look to the octal representation, and we'll use that number to represent that permissions. Okay, so let's go through here. So before we do that, help in Unix, as we know, is man, M-A-N, stands for manual, by the way. And we'll go look at chmod or chmod. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. Chmod. Okay, so we see chmod, and we see a list of options. We see mode, and we see octal mode representation. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing the octal mode representation. On another lecture, we'll show you the mode types of permissions, which I think you'll actually like a little bit better. It's a little more user-friendly, a little more intuitive than the octal version. Although I grew up with the octal version, it seems intuitive to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the octal mode representation here. So we'll say Q for quit, okay, and we'll do a clear, and we'll do an ls. Now I want to show you another ls command, dash uppercase A and L. I'm going to hit return, and you'll notice it shows us all the files, but the uppercase A option leaves off the current directory and the root directory, the period and the double period files, which is kind of a handy thing to do. Well, let's look at this. Okay, let's say that file 1, we want to turn all permissions off. We don't want anybody to do anything. Okay, so what we do is we say chmod, and we say 0 for the user. Okay, that's right there. 0 for the owner or group, and then 0 for everybody else, and we'll say file 1.dat. Okay, we don't say anything. I'm going to hit the up arrow key which gives me the previous command, I'm going to do a list structure dash uppercase AL and hit enter, and you'll see that file 1 has no permissions in it. Alright, now let's just keep working with file1.dat. Let's say that I want to give the owner read and execute privileges, but nobody else anything. Okay, so chmod. Well, the owner, we want read and execute only. So we'll look at that and we say read and execute only. Okay, that's 010. That's a 5. Okay, 5. So the first number is for the owner, the second one is for the group, and the third one is for the owner. No permissions. File1.dat. Okay, I'm going to hit the up arrow key to go back to the previous command that lists the directory contents, and we see that file1.dat indeed has a read and execute, but no write for file1.dat. Okay. This gets fairly redundant fairly quick. Once you do this a couple of times, you see how to do it, and it's not terribly difficult. Let's just go through and let's change some permissions for the group and the owner. Let's give a very common type of permission. We're going to say file chmod 755. So if we look at 755 and we see what that is, okay, 7 is all permissions. So the first number is for the owner, so that's 7. The owner can do everything. The group has a 5 in it, so we look at that, and they can read and execute. And then the world has read and execute. And this is a very, very common permission to give, let's say, in a web page environment where you want the owner of the directory to have all permissions to write. It's very critical. But everybody else, you want to be able to read and execute it, but not change it. Okay, so file1.dat. Okay, to the up arrow key to get to the ls uppercase AL, and then we see that indeed file1.dat has permissions for the owner can do everything and everybody else can do read and execute. Now let me clear. Let me do uppercase AL, and then I can just do that on the file itself. Oops. I entered correctly. So I can just do that on the file itself. Do the ls structure. Okay. Okay, let me get everything again. Now I could do a mass change. Let's say I just don't want to change all of I don't want to change the files individually. Let's say I want to change all the .dat files to something. Okay, so let's say chmod, and what do I want to do? I want to say 744 or no, it's 711. That's better. Execute. So maybe it's a script file or something like that. And *.dat. Use the wildcard. All right, wildcard. So I'll do that. Okay. So let's see if it changed them. I'm going to do an up arrow key here to go back to our command, and I'm going to change the lowercase a to an uppercase a. Okay. *.dat. And there we go. And we can see that all those have the same permission. Okay. Let's use another wildcard on that. Let's say chmod. Okay. 7. We have 44. Let's 744. Okay. f***text. Now this is the same as *.test, but let's say I'm going to change all of the files that start with the letter F and end in .txt, and I'm going to change them. So what? 7 means what? 7 means that the owner, the user, has all permissions, and 4 means that the 4 right here means that the group can read and the world can read. And let's do that one, and then let's go back and look, and we see that whoops, and we see that the .txt, indeed, that they can all have if you see them right here, the .txt, that everybody can read, everybody else can read, but I can read, write, and execute. Well, that is the Octal version of chmod. It's not very difficult. One note on this particular version of chmod is that you can't change individual permissions. In other words, I just can't go in and change the permission for the group or the owner or the world. I have to set the entire permissions, and that's kind of a disadvantage of this particular version of chmod. You're setting all the permissions every time. Fortunately, it's a fairly simple thing to do. It's a fairly easy thing to remember. Once you use it for a couple times, the numbers mean everything. 7 means everything. 5 means read and execute. 1 means execute only. You typically only use, you don't use all the numbers. For instance, you very seldom ever just give someone 4 or read only. It's usually read and execute. You typically don't give 3, which is write and execute. If you're going to give somebody their ability to write it, you're going to give them the ability to read it too. So you quickly remember what the numbers mean, and you don't even have to think about setting the bits anymore. Practice this a few times, and then we're going to go on to the next version of chmod, which is the mode version of it, which I think you'll find much more interesting. Alright, on to version 3.